Hello, students. Welcome to Easy Elimu Learning Simplified. My name is Mr. Stanley Ombogo. So, dear students, welcome to another session. And in this session, I'd like us to, distinguish among mood, tone, and attitude in poetry. So, these three areas, tend to be confusing more and more, even after several attempts with, the candidates. So in this session, we have something that is, a bit simplified. We will start by looking at the definition of all the trio, that is mood, attitude, and tone. We will go ahead, that is to give some of the words or the adjectives that are used to describe the mood. Again, the adjectives that are used to describe attitude and adjectives that are used to describe the tone. Then something interesting is that we have a sample poem that we will, go through to try and, see if at all whatever we, shall have learned at the end of the session will be objective. So at the end of the session, dear students, ensure that you know the definition of mood, attitude, and tone, and also uh, you are supposed to be in a position to identify them in any given sample of a poem. So to begin with, let us look at mood. So mood refers to the feelings you get when you read a poem or the atmosphere that surround events in a poem, and that could influence how the reader or the audience feels after reading or listening to the poem. So a poem that centers on funeral or death, for example, will certainly have a sorrowful or a sad mood, whereas a poem that centers on wedding or any other celebration of an achievement should have a happy, contented, or jovial mood. So I believe that you are able to see the two different types of atmosphere that we have. When we are talking about funeral, we expect people to be grief stricken. We expect people to be sorrowful. But when we talk about things like wedding or celebration, we expect people to be happy, contented, and jovial. So yeah, mood refers to the feelings that you get when you read a poem. So next, let us, try and look at the definition of attitude so that we compare it to that of mood. So, talking about attitude, dear students, attitude refers to the feelings that the persona has towards the subject the persona is talking about. So, for instance, we can have a poem that in the poem the persona may describe someone who is corrupting children and oppressing people using words like disgusting, blemish, rogue, etc. So the attitude therefore would be resentful or hateful or even malicious. So if the persona uses polite and loving terms to describe an event or a person like charming, amiable, kind, and so on, then the attitude of the persona towards the subject, will be approving, welcoming, sympathetic, or can we talk about, caring in this case? So it is therefore important to use the persona's words in determining his or her attitude towards the subject. And talking about persona, persona is not the author of the poem or the writer. It is the voice behind the words that have been chosen by the author. So a persona is therefore the speaker, or the sound that you get when you are reading a poem. Of course, you don't get a sound, but the words that you get. So let's move to the next one, that is tone. So tone, dear students, refers to the nature of the voice used in a poem. So it is important to know what the poem is talking about in order to identify the tone of the persona. So the tone of the persona is closely influenced by the attitude towards the subject and the general mood of the poem. And this is the reason why in most cases you find that the adjectives that are used to describe attitude sometimes not in all cases, but sometimes they are the same as the adjectives that are used to, describe the tone. So tone and attitude are correlated. For instance, if the persona loved the subject and his attitude towards it was loving, if the subject is dead, God forbid, or for example, then the tone would be sad. So if the subject is around it, uh, might be loving tone, and so on. If the persona, another thing, if the persona is a father talking to a son in a polite way, the tone can be patronizing. So I believe you are able to see the correlation that is between attitude and tone. So uh, attitude and tone sometimes share certain adjectives, but mood is totally different from the two. So on to the next thing, I'd like us to look at the tones that we can use to describe, tone, attitude, and mood. So some of the adjectives for tone in poetry include, so a tone can be sarcastic, remorseful, obnoxious, dull, guilty, alarmed, fresh, dreary, light, startled, sadistic, happy, heavy, horrified, secular, sad, quizzical, or inquisitive. So quizzical and inquisitive are the same. They tend to ask or a lot of questions. So we have this grantal tone, political, narcissistic, sardonic, or mocking, hurtful, social, devoted, foolish, loving, liberal, democratic, bitter, sour, sympathetic, mysterious, conservative, angry, intelligent, or enlightened, clever. The trio mean the same. Religious, resentful, or hateful. They also mean the same. Irritated, despiteful, prayerful, annoyed, suspicious, and doubtful are still the same. Then melancholic. So some of the adjectives that we can use for attitude include joyous, angry, sad, uh, cold, warm or agreeable, contemptuous, calm, delightful, kind, trustful, sadistic, cheerful, playful, appreciative, fearful, and resentful. We have also those that we can use to describe our mood, and those are serene or calm, respectful, happy, fearful, sorrowful, somber, melancholic, jovial, reflective, or meditative, angry, nostalgic, or thoughtful. So we have a sample question here that we are going to go through together that will help us identify uh, or establish the mood, tone, and attitude of the poem that we have. So the poem is about a pregnant schoolgirl. I'm going to go through it very fast. So he paid her seat in the matatu and walked away. As he disappeared in the city crowd, all her dreams vanished. One more passenger squeezed in and lit a cigarette. She opened the window and spat cold saliva out. As the cigarette smoke intensified, she wanted to vomit. She remembered the warm nights when she was her man's pet. She remembered the promises, the gifts, the parties, the dances. She remembered her classmates at school who envied her expensive shoes, lipstick, wristwatch, handbag, which she bought to school after a weekend with him. The future stood against her, dark late night without the moon, and silent like the end of the world. As the matatu sped away from the city, she began to tremble with fear, wondering what her parents would say. With all hope gone, she felt like a corpse going home to be buried. So remember the question instructed us to establish the mood, attitude, and tone after reading the poem. So the mood of this poem is sad because when you read, you feel sad and a bit sympathetic for that is for the pregnant schoolgirl who has been used by her lover and dumped, and who now feels like a corpse with no future. Again, the attitude of the persona towards the schoolgirl is sympathetic. And to illustrate this, the persona feels sympathy for the girl, and that is why he dwells on the consequences of her condition by saying the future stood against her. So she began to tremble with fear. That is how, that is just one of the lines that we have in the poem. Then to conclude, the tone of the persona is calm, or we can also say it is indifferent. And this is because the persona remains calm throughout the poem, only showing a bit of sympathy for the girl's condition, but not getting emotionally involved in the life of the girl. So, dear students, just like I promised, I think that sample will help us understand or distinguish among, mood, tone, and attitude better. So remember to always keep it easy, Limu. Until next time.